where studio people like myself now, the big question for me as a studio director is when I started in, I won't say when I started in video games, but when I started League of Geeks, it was a very clear, almost like crazily clear path to indie success. It required skill and execution and, some capital or a way to find it, some resourcefulness in finding it, and then a whole ton of luck. But you made a great indie game. You weaseled your way somehow into getting onto one of the platforms by meeting someone at Valve or getting into some awards and them reaching out and inviting you onto Steam or something like that. And then you hit the award circuit. You made something good enough and different enough that would hit the award circuit. And then by the time you put your game, and then you also talk to some press, because there were traditional press at that point in time too. And you get your story out through the press. Then maybe these little fledgling, but somehow powerful folks called YouTubers or influencers, might pick up on those stories, and then that'll give you a little boost. And then you put your game on Steam and cash came out the other end, as long as it was a great product. And that's how, when I came up in indie games, a lot of my friends became quite wealthy and quite successful and had, I have friends who have game studios that have like 100 years of runway or something because they came up through that period, and they've been able to then since kept build an audience and capitalize on that. But nowadays, looking at the market and what you can do as an indie studio head, especially if you just want to make premium PC and console games that don't have some like free-to-play or long-tail games as a service kind of hook to it, it's a really scary prospect for how do I do this in a sustainable fashion, considering all of the forces out there. Solium Infernum, one of our games that we released in February last year, is our most successful commercial release in regards to the money that it made at launch. When we released Armello in 2015, it made enough money that it was a success, but not enough for us to really be happy about it, to hit the metrics that we wanted. I like to say it was successful enough that complaining about it would have made us assholes. So we decided, we had a chat. We're like, what do we do? Do we continue supporting this game? And we were like, well, it's making enough to keep going, so let's just try and grow it. And we managed to. And there were enough levers and dials and things that we could do, locums of agency that we had as studio heads and creatives and, marketing folks and all the different hats that we wear in the studio to be able to drive the success of that game on our various platforms, whether that be talking to people, internal champions at those places, or the ability to, use particular tools in the back end, or the, meet influencers or talk to the press and get them excited again. So many of those things have been removed from us because of a number of things: saturation, the amount of content out there, a push into algorithmic curation as opposed to hand curation. Even just the platforms getting better and more user-friendly means there's less reason for someone from the Steam team to like talk to you, or not that they don't want to, but why would they when there's a tool for that in the back end now? You don't need to reach out to them to chat about those things. So there are a number of factors that come into this. And I mean, one of the things that affected us that led to our layoffs was just, geopolitical volatility, the US and the AUD, just spiking and falling through development. Lockdown hit us in a big way too. And I think there's just been a number of things that have happened in recent years that have really kind of, it's like video games was this little eco colony, a little biokingdom in a jar, a little terrarium that we had. And it's just kind of been shaken up a few times. And it's just created a kind of traumatic response, I would say, within the games industry and within our little ecosystem over the last few years. That just as we're recovering, something else kind of happens, and I think it's really hard for a lot of people to get their feet. Now, having said all of that and this big sort of state of dev rant, and as grim it is as it is, I think it is also worth acknowledging that during these periods of time, there is also great opportunity too for those who are able to see it or even able to navigate it, because sometimes it's a privilege to even be able to be small and agile enough, or to be big enough, or whatever. And there is a kind of Dickensian tale of two cities going on at the moment as well. Like, as I mentioned, I've got friends who have hundreds of years of runway, and that money they're making now as well, it's not just legacy cash, right? There are people who are doing very, very well now. And when I talk to people about my studio who are outside of games and what's happened, I'm sharing what's happened in the last 18 months, and I talk to them about the crash in video games, or this huge economic contraction, They're like, oh, I didn't know that. And it's like, yeah, well, of course you wouldn't, looking at it from the outside, unless you're reading, maybe you're reading some tech, games adjacent, mainstream tech, like masthead, like The Verge, and you're hearing about layoffs, because the amount of money being made in games is just as much as ever before. All of the economic contraction that we're feeling has been people gradually just taking their chips off the table, in late 22, especially through mid to late 23, when we saw the major strategics like Tencent and NetEase and everything just shut down signing across the board. So yeah, it's a really, really, really interesting time for games. And I think one of the biggest challenges for us as leaders is not just the stuff that we've got to talk about now, and I'm really grateful that we've always taken a very governance forward, business forward perspective on making video games and running our studio, because it helped us prepare for, what we had to go through and be able to navigate it, even though, it hit us pretty hard. But I think there's a real commercial reality to video games now that other industries have not been spared from, other mediums have not been spared from, and it feels like the kind of the Grim Reaper or those storm clouds have finally worked their way around to video games. And I think that age of endless bounty is very much over.
There's something that comes to mind for me as you walk through that, because I think it does paint a compelling picture. And that idea of us going through our own version of what other entertainment mediums have gone through in the past. I call out a couple of things that I find distinct, and I actually worry that we are rushing towards a gig economy inside of the context of game development. But what that looks like is actually not a lot of individuals all looking to get onto projects. Mm-hmm. It's actually a bunch of small teams, little co-dev studios that we start specializing in something like engine tech, or we start specializing in something. Oh yeah, we do the like realistic style animation, or we're the best shader sort of renderers you can find. Like we will make that texture look pristine. Yep. For your realist, whatever it is, right? And one of the things that pops for me as I think about that, and I'm not saying it won't happen. I am saying it's going to be sad, not just for the industry of developers, but I think also for the players in the end. If you lead teams in game or software development and you're tired of wasteful and unreliable estimation, I've built an online course just for you. It's called Advanced Estimation for Game and Software Development, and it's a self-paced course with over 15 hours of content, real-world examples, and tools you can start using right away. Estimation doesn't have to be a morale-draining mess. Planning doesn't have to feel unrealistic and contrived. You can do better, and this course will help. Early access is now open with lifetime access and a big launch discount, but there's limited seats at this price point. Check it out at this URL or in the show notes below.